Hello, all you Homo sapiens. Happy New Year. Today is Monday, January the 1st, 2024. We made it. I hope everybody had a safe night last night. We did. A lot of gunshots going off here, but I hope they were shooting them in the ground, not in the air. Anyway, the article I'm going to share is, of course, I find it interesting. But it is a little lengthy, so bear with me. So let's get it started. This is the first video of the new year. It says Neanderthals and humans may belong to the same species, say scientists. It could rewrite the history of our evolution. Up until recently, this consensus was that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were separate species. But most humans carry around 2% of Neanderthal DNA, challenging the view that we are different. Other studies suggest Neanderthals weren't inferior to Homo sapiens and should be considered human. Neanderthals have long been portrayed as dim-witted, brutish monsters who were genetically inferior to our direct ancestors, early modern humans. These ape-like creatures spoke in grunts, were beset with illness, and died about 40,000 years ago after losing the evolutionary battle against Homo sapiens. Or at least that's what we've been told. Recent discoveries, however, are appending that view and reigniting a debate among scientists about whether Neanderthals should be considered to be the same species as early modern humans. If Neanderthals belong to our species, it could reshape the history. Hang on a minute. Reshape the history of human evolution and challenge how we define what makes us human. Most of us have some Neanderthal DNA. The first fossils of Neanderthals were identified almost 200 years ago. By now, you would think scientists would have made up their minds about whether they should be defined as a separate species from Homo sapiens. But it turns out this is a matter of fierce debate. Antonio Blazou, a pathologist from the Museum National d'Histoire Naturelle in France, told Business Insider. When we were first discussing the fossils in the 19th century, there was no real debate about specific species or not, simply because at the time humans were seen as a species, but by default, he says. Oops, did I go up too fast? No. As more fossils emerged, scientists started questioning the strict separation between the species. Still up to recently, the consensus was mostly that Neanderthals should be seen as separate. The hominians, who roamed Europe as early as 430,000 years ago, only briefly interacted with Homo sapiens emerging from Africa, who reached Europe about 50,000 years ago. Their lineage is separated about 500,000 years ago, relatively recently in the story of human evolution, but long enough ago that they looked significantly different. For many, that evidence was enough to close the debate. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were separate species. That view started to change in 2008 when Swedish genetics, so the study of genes, Svante Pobo achieved something that was thought to be impossible. He sequenced the genome of the Neanderthal by extracting DNA from ancient bones. Through his research, Pabu, I guess that's how you say his name, was able to show that there's a little Neanderthal in most of us. In fact, he showed most living humans carry around 2% of Neanderthal DNA. The evidence also suggests that human ancestors and Neanderthals likely had children together when they cohabitated about 50,000 years ago. This news created a dogmatic rift, opening up the possibility once again that Neanderthals and humans should be considered to be the same species. After all, according to the strict biological definition of species, animals from different species shouldn't be able to produce fertile offspring. It definitely was a big game changer at that point. Laura Buck, an evolutionary anthropologist studying hybridization between hominin species. I think it sort of brought that discussion to the forefront again, she says. Were Neanderthals more than just our distant cousins? The idea that the species cannot reproduce is intuitively attract, attractive because it's sort of clear cut, Buck said. But biology isn't clear cut. Okay. She points to several examples of mammals that have been known to interbreed and have fertile offspring, like wolves and dogs, despite being clearly defined as separate species. For her better definition of Neanderthals, the most scientifically tried and tested is the first one. The characteristics of their bones separate them from modern humans and their direct ancestors. I know there are various different papers saying if you shaved a Neanderthal, put him in a suit, and put him on the tube or the subway in New York, no one would notice. I don't think that's true, she said. I think we definitely think they would look a bit weird. Beluze agrees. There may be some discussion between specialists about how we define the different groups, but from a paleontological point of view, Homo neanderthalensis and almost Homo sapiens are very clear atomically different or differences. For others, however, the genomic information should be another argument to liberate the Neanderthal from his knuckle dragging stereotype. That's the case for Paul Petit, an archaeologist who specializes in political at Durham University in UK. It would be guesswork to use that evolutionary divergence to assume that there are different species. I don't know. Can culture define a species? Over the past 2 decades, digs started emerging showing Neanderthals may have been much more sophisticated than had been previously thought. Petit counts himself among those who, until recently, were skeptical that Neanderthals could have any sense of sophistication. And this is just funny. Until, say, 20 years ago, Neanderthal behavior was looked on as fairly stupid or at least fairly limited, and Homo sapiens were, by contrast, seen as quoting Shakespeare as they dance across Europe. He joked, which is, of course, nonsense, but it's very entrenched view. After all, relative to their size, some studies suggest Neanderthals had a brain least the same size, if not bigger, than our ancestors, indicating that they may have been very cerebral. Cerebral. Thank you, my wife. I knew the word, I just couldn't spit it out. You don't buy a top of the range computer simply to use it as an alarm clock. There's got to be an evolutionary reason why Neanderthals had selected for this remarkably metabolically expensive tissue, he said. Studies have suggested that Neanderthals were skilled hunters and hide workers, created rudimentary jewelry, had a complex lyric industry, and even worked with pigment. Some scientists even believe they have had some form of spiritualism and would bury their dead, revere lions, and may have even created cave paintings, though that evidence is still a matter of debate. So there you go. For the year 2024, you just found out you got 2% Neanderthal in you. Anyway, I hope everybody has a great new year. And although there's a lot of doom and gloom, let's try to be as happy as we can. I know that sounds crazy, but it can happen. This is Wolfgang. Blessed be. Happy New Year. Stay safe. And I'll chat with y'all later. Bye.